Hey, yeah. So we're live. There it is. What's up, YouTube? What's up, YouTube? Thank you for showing up. If you have shown up, we'll be here for a minute. I know you might be looking for Laura. She's not going to be in the comment section, or at least not just yet. Maybe she'll pop in. But what's up? Welcome to Political Drain. This is a very special one. We're going live today with a very special guest, Big Sarge, the artist formerly known as Admin Tim, as it were.
Very
and
special.
yeah, man, what's going on with you? How are you, brother?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm excellent. I'm excellent. So I'm sure you know. Well, obviously, you know. I told you, and you guys out there know because I've been saying it forever. The reason why this one is so special. Hey, what's up, Jackie Brown? What's up, Sonia? The reason why this one is so special is because this this is a answer or a response to a question that I've gotten so many times in my comment section, and the people who ask it are usually fans of both of ours. So, if you guys don't know, Admin Tim, Big Sarge himself, is from the Sons of Liberty Facebook page, first of all, then YouTube channel, and all of the other places. I'll let him tell you more about that. Um, and I'm sure that you know that because if you know me, I've been on there as well a few times. So, uh, how's that going, by the way, man? You guys are blowing up.
Um, I, I'll admit that the loss of our Facebook page was kind of a big blow to morale, but we've been growing steadily on YouTube and TikTok, so I guess it's fair trade.
Oh,
Um,
oh yeah. What? And you see, technology is going to be a part of the answer to this question too. What happened? You guys said something that was too spicy for Facebook, so they can put
so
on
so that's the thing that we don't know because I started the page in 2016, in early 2016, I believe.
right.
And since then I've been suspended and shadow banned many times. It's nothing new. This particular time, um, all of the admins got a notification that content that they had posted was found to be in violation of the rules. It was objectionable, and it said in a little pop-up, it said reason, and then that spot was blank. And but you could click on it and it would take you to a page post, but there was nothing there. And the page was down. People were like, we can't find the page. And I logged into, I have a backup account under the exact same name,
Right.
same profile picture and everything, but I don't have any friends on it. And it's there specifically because I've been suspended so many times to a point where, like, when you get suspended, you can't use Facebook groups, you can't moderate your pages, things like that. You can't comment on
Yeah.
anything, you can't even react. So I had that set up so that when I do get suspended, I can still put out content on the page and do other things like moderate the comments because we get a lot of disreputable MAGA deplorables or whatever. So
Right. Right.
not going to let them run rampant. Anyway, so all of the admins basically got a message that said that content they'd posted was found to be objectionable, and when you click the link, it would go to the post, but it never went anywhere. So then we were all told individually that we had to upload a picture of ourselves holding our identification, and we had to link our phones to our accounts to verify that we were real, and they would send us a code, and you had to enter the code. um, but the page is still blocked out. Like you can't get there. The original URL doesn't work. Um, and we never got an answer from Facebook. But if you go look at certain other groups,
Uh-huh.
they have content up there like, I mean, literally using racial slurs and homophobic slurs. And they're not typing it out. They're not typing like in one
Yeah.
GG3R. They're literally, and I'm like, I've never posted anything like that. I mean, I might say fuck MAGA, but I've
Wow.
never on Facebook ever, not even ironically, like I don't even quote rap lyrics and spell out a word or anything. I'm not fucking stupid. So it's like, so you're telling me that something that we posted that said, "Look at these fascists," or whatever the fuck it was that we said, we were never told.
Was worse
But
than a Ku
these
Klux
guys,
Klan rally.
yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And it happened right about the time that we started running stories continually about Meta's new hire, the guy who is like a longtime member of the Heritage Foundation,
Oh,
Dustin
yeah.
McCorkle, whatever the fuck his name is, the
I
fucking
forgot
bald
his
guy
name,
with a
but I
beard. He's
know.
like, so it's like as soon as we started running content about that, all of a sudden our page mysteriously got shut down. So we
Wow.
had to create a new one, and people were like, "What happened to your page?" Even though we've said like a billion times we have a new Facebook page.
Yeah. Oh man, that sucks. I mean, I heard about that, and as soon as I heard it, I was like, "What is going on?" Uh, I got some sort of warning one time, and I kind of figured that that was it. But how blatant are they gonna be, man? Jesus.
It's there were when we created the new page, there were a lot of people who found our page and were like, because we have a private Facebook group called the Group of Liberty, and we also have a Discord and we have other social media. So we're just like, hey, we have a new Facebook page because the old one got shut down. And a lot of people were coming on there and they manage their own pages. There's like U.S. Department of Shit Posting in Exile and Vermont Department of Memes, just random pages with silly names, but they're definitely leftist. And they're like, yeah, my page got shut down too. And it's like Facebook cracked down on all these left leaning pages, but they don't do shit. And I literally mean they don't do shit about white supremacist pages because
The
there
fascist
are
white
actual
supremacists.
there are actual pages up there for like Stormfront and all kinds of like bona fide hate groups that post
Yeah,
hate filled content. And there are groups that our content gets shared to and they're stupid and leave it open to the public. So when you click the little thing as an admin to see who shares it and you see that it was shared to the KKK chapter 666 David Duke honorary Hall of Fame fucking thing, and it's
Jesus
like,
Christ.
look at these fucking liberals. And the comments are literally dudes that are like shit posting whatever the fuck. And it's like, you guys
How
don't
is
have
this?
anything to say about those guys, but our page that says fuck Donald Trump is the one that gets shut down. Okay, suck my left nut, you motherfuckers. Mark Fuckerberg.
Jesus Christ, man! What the hell? You're still. I'm still getting Haitians eating cats and dogs memes,
I
and
haven't seen
and, and the
I haven't
Sons of
seen one of those
Liberty
in a
get
while.
shut down.
Yeah.
Uh, people
Yeah.
people still trying to inject themselves with hydrochloroquine, and 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 the Sons of Liberty is shut down. All right, well, that's gonna we're going to get into that because the whole technology thing has is going to be a part of how we got here. People, you know why you came if you saw the thumbnail. The question is, how did we get here? And I'm just going to read it straight from um, the commenter that basically, let's see, the commenter that basically sparked this. So let me find, where is it? My window. Okay,
I'm gonna
hold on,
I'm gonna
guys.
fucking sneeze here in a second, and it's gonna be
Go
violent.
ahead.
So I'm gonna hopefully get my mic muted before that happens. I feel it building. Like I need to like snort some pepper and look directly at the sun to make it happen. But it's it's one of those like, look, I'm a sneeze and I'm inside you, but I'm not gonna come out. I'm like a little cat out here under the bed.
And the longer it waits, the
Yeah,
the harder it
yeah,
gets.
yeah. And then you sneeze, and people are like, "Why are you crying?" Because you're like, "Ugh."
All right. So, uh, pending pending a gigantic freaking sneeze coming from Big Sarge there. Listen to this, guys, or hopefully you can see it as well as we can. Scott Reese, HI1B1, 1BI. This is what he said, and this is what got this whole thing started, people. Maybe you're feeling the same way. Where did we go wrong? I have always been somewhere near the middle politically, but things have swung so far to the right that my values now place me in the left. History often shows politics swings back and forth like a pendulum. One side will stand for something and the other side will do the opposite. What the hell happened on the left for it to swing so far right? Do I lack insight? What am I not getting? Did I go nose blind to my own BS uh, now that I find myself left of the middle? This pendulum model suggests the left should have screwed up too. Maybe this could be a discussion live stream with Sons of Liberty. Maybe after the election, we all need to learn from our mistakes. First of all, if you're here, Scott Reese, the insight, right? The ability to look inside yourself and even ask that question, am I getting something wrong? Did I go nose blind to my own BS? Is quite unique and admirable because I promise you that absolutely nobody is willing to ask themselves that question anymore. So kudos to you. But I think that you hit the nail on the head. The left is also complacent in this or compliant in this swing. But the question itself, where did we go wrong? How did we get here? I want to pose it to you first, Admin Tim. Where would you like to start? Give me an idea of when this started. Did this whole thing start with Trump? Did this whole thing start um, 8 years ago when all of a sudden fascism showed up? Or is it deeper than that? I believe it is. What do you say?
Jesus. Uh, where do you even begin? I mean, there's literally there's so much, and everybody has such a short attention span, and we don't have like fucking 30 years
Well,
to
I'll
go over all of it. I could.
let me narrow it down. Let me narrow it down. We'll start because there's a few topics. All come from commenters that I think hit on specific points. But let me tell you where I go first. When you're asking where did this start, um, I don't think that we're gonna go far back as 1939 and the German Bund and the Nazi party that was here up until we got Pearl Harbor got bombed. We're not gonna go there because saying that there is a far right pendulum swing um, in America that never left, a far right part of America that has never really died down, should be obvious. And if it isn't obvious, know that. That's where we're starting. But there were always guidelines, there were always guardrails in place after World War II. One of these guardrails was the media and something called the fairness doctrine. Now I'm not sure when the fairness doctrine was imposed, but I do know that um, the idea that television, the airwaves were owned by the government, so the government required that TV stations had news, and the news had to be put both sides on or had to be fair. And if you had to be as honest as possible, you could be interrupted if you were found to be blatantly dishonest. This whole doctrine made it so that Walter Cronkite was as famous to the Republicans as he was to Democrats, because your entire brand was based on what you could, what kind of things you could get from punching up. That was it. Like, if you could find out something that happened in any administration, no matter what it was, you got, credentials, you got credence, you got street cred by saying, we found out what this administration was doing wrong, and then when the next one came, you found out what this one was doing wrong. By putting on both sides, having real debate, uh, telling secrets, actual investigation. After Nixon, a lot of people may not know this. After Nixon, well, during Nixon's presidency, there's a guy named Roger Ailes who is in charge of his media team. Roger Ailes and Nixon said, we need to have our own television, we need to have our own news, because if we could, instead of doing things, stop being bad and stop stealing and stop lying, we could lie and steal all we want. If we just had our own news, then the people would only hear what we want them to hear. Nixon didn't get to do it. Rupert Murdoch found Roger Ailes after Nixon was gone. They teamed up and they planned and proposed and forced through Congress and lobbying, getting rid of the fairness doctrine. After that was born something called right-wing news media. Before, it was just media. Of course, commentators, pundits had bias, but you weren't allowed to just be a Democratic station. You weren't allowed to be a MSNBC. You weren't allowed to be a Fox News. Neil Bortz, Rush Limbaugh, all of this right-wing radio came after they pressured Reagan to get rid of the fairness doctrine. Immediately after that, or what we get now, and this is the one spike that I want to talk about, and I want to know what you think about it. What we have now is what happens when people don't have to listen to anything but what they already believe for their entire life, and never have to turn a channel or see anything or read anything or discover anything. They can just continue down a rabbit hole that becomes what we see now. I'll go further into it. What do you think about that? That to me is where this started. How we got here may go further. What do you think about that?
I mean, that's one facet
One
of a
facet. Right.
multifaceted issue. And a lot of these, some things are not related to each other. It's just they happen to be the quote unquote perfect storm. But then there are other things that are linked together. So you mentioned 1939, and I do want to circle back to uh, the 40s, because after World War II, the Republican Party specifically took in ex-Nazis and fascists, basically so that we could take their science and technology, because we had to own the communists. They were close to the Nazis were working on atomic weapons. We got there first, and we also kicked the shit out of them because punch Nazis.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that kind of built a foundation. That kind of, the Republican Party was like, we'll take these guys because we beat them in combat. Now they're our bitch, and they hate the communists as much as we do. And I guess after that, the Dixiecrats jumping to the GOP in the civil rights era basically provided what I like to think of as a slow poison to essentially kill off the GOP. So if you leave out like all these other modern events like Citizens United, extreme gerrymandering, regulatory capture via judiciary, and like a whole lot of other things. I mean, first of all, let's fucking start with the internet. I mean, so like I'm in my late 40s and I had Star Trek The Next Generation in the 80s. So
Uh-huh.
there's this utopian society, and I promise this is going somewhere. This utopian society is presented on the telly with aliens living alongside of each other. Every starship has this enormous database of everything that you could ever want to know, and
Hmm.
all of that knowledge was basically unrestricted. You could be random Joe Snuffy, the red shirt transporter operator. You could even be somebody's kid on the Enterprise, and you could go learn anything that you want, and nobody ever saw a negative side to it.
Right.
So that was the expectation is, oh yeah, the future's going to be great. I'm going to know everything. So now we've got the internet and bad actors out there um, inject fake bullshit into everything. But it's not the internet's fault per se. The internet is not a sentient thing.
Right.
It's people on the internet peddling shit to other people that are gullible or or that want to believe things. So I guess for me personally, there's a couple of big things that I would focus on. Um, First and foremost, the education system, and that branches into like several different little subtopics. And then there's the media itself and our understanding of the media versus what the media's message is intended to be.
Perfect.
And then there are like some other things on top of that. But so essentially, with the education system in general, so there's a thing that basically says democracies require a citizenry that are capable of making intelligent and informed decisions regarding their own governance,
Yes.
whereas dictatorships don't. And if you look at historic, like big name dictatorships, they actively suppress education. They vilify the quote unquote intelligentsia, the educated, the regardless of what that person's political motivations may be. Anybody with an education is dangerous to a dictatorship
Right.
unless they're working with that dictatorship, because your average citizen has to be knowledgeable in basic civics. And this is a thing that we used to teach. I haven't been in school in fucking forever, so I don't know if it's still a thing, but we used to teach basic civics. And people need to be trained in critical thinking, if only to be able to assess the validity of a claim. But the things that would turn people into competent citizens, like civic minded citizens, are like the things like civics, critical thinking, and the humanities. They're all being washed out of like high school, like AP and college prep courses, collegiate curriculum. And, and I'm going to say a thing and then I'm going to backtrack on that thing because it's good and bad. So, like, a lot of college has now become primarily focused on job training, and that's both good and bad. Like, there are pros and cons to it. Like, a lot of people say, oh, we don't have enough people in trade schools, and that is true to an extent, but also you need like you go to college not for fucking underwater basket weaving, but you go to learn a profession, but also you learn critical thinking. And I kind of skipped that part because I did college whilst I was in the military. My critical thinking and assessment training came in the military, but it was very narrowly focused, but it gave me a foundation. So with people that now that we've kind of like gotten rid of a lot of that, the result is a public that is, in my opinion, sorely lacking in an ability to tell truth from fiction. And people are
Yes.
easily victimized by by false by like falsehoods and the promises of the impossible. Like just the amount of and it's not any one particular political party, although in my biased opinion, I feel like it is slanted, but people just believe the most outlandish shit. Like on the left, people that are like, oh, we could have this utopian Star Trek society, and then people on the right, oh, we could like build the fucking Great Wall of China across the southern border, and no Mexicans would ever get in.
Right.
It's
So
like, who's going to build the wall? Mexicans, because we're going to hire the cheapest labor. And you don't think that they're going to like figure out how to get over it or under it or around it or whatever? You're
so
going to like stop in the ocean to swim around it? Fucking
well
dumb
wait a minute.
shit.
So here's the thing. There's a lot in there.
Yeah,
There's
it
two.
is a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot in there. So there's two things I want to talk about. And I see everybody's questions. I got you guys. We're going to be asking these questions. I see your comments, Alley Cattails. I don't know. I see Laura. Appreciate you there, moderating the chat. I see your question too. We're going to get to it, but fine. That instinct to believe that you can just say and do something and it'll be true. It's not like that's new. That's
Yeah,
how do you think Hitler can tell everybody that, oh, we can just exterminate an entire people?
right. I mean, we've
And
got
then guess
thousands
what?
of years of
We
history
can,
of that going on.
right, we can
So,
not only exterminate them so they no longer exist on the earth, we can conquer every other country on earth and everybody's just going to fall down. They're going to love it. I think that this always stems from, like, you're right. You got to have, there's a certain amount of education, then there's a certain amount of civics, critical thinking, but all of that erodes and starts with media. All that
oh,
erodes
absolutely.
or starts with the media, right?
Yeah. Remember 2016?
Yeah.
And I mentioned 2016 specifically because during that time period, this was when Donald Trump was first running for office, like as a serious contender, as opposed to all the other times that he ran previously and was laughed off the stage. The president of CBS, I forget the guy's name, but I remember it was the CBS network, said Donald Trump might not be good for America, but he was definitely good for CBS's ratings.
Mm-hmm.
Reporters in various news medias, whether it was like Fox News or MSN or even people that were quote unquote traditionally centrist, whether it was AP or Reuters or at the time CNN, which hadn't quite devolved into just somebody's fucking mouthpiece, and even just like the big three networks, they all fueled this dude's candidacy because he was the primary candidate. And to an extent, you can't like you can't be biased. Let me rephrase that. You can't be blatantly biased in your reporting. If you're going to give time to one candidate, you got to have the perception that you're giving time to other candidates. But
You
they
you
gave the guy a blank
used
check
to.
to get on their shows. You remember, like, the fucking, who was it? Who's that stupid talk show guy? Jimmy Fallon, I think. He had Donald Trump on his show, and his whole thing was like, "Can I touch your hair?" He didn't like ask him about any of his campaigns. He didn't call him on any of his bullshit. It turned into a joke where his whole thing was, "I want to get this guy to let me touch his hair," because
Yeah.
everybody was making fun of Trump's hair or whatever. So these dudes fawned all over this one particular candidate who was saying this outlandish shit and giving him opportunities for exposure in order to boost their own ratings and profits.
Right.
Journalistic integrity took a backseat to the almighty dollar, to profit. And kind of the same thing happened in 2024 and the run up to 2024. You, especially like very recently, the story broke about Jeff Bezos, for example, and the guy, Patrick Soon Shiong, I think was his name, from the LA Times. You have these wealthy media moguls who are afraid to condemn a candidate or endorse another candidate because they realize, or they have this fear that and they'll put out a public statement that sounds good as a soundbite. Oh, we're not gonna go one way or the other because reasons, but everybody else at that outlet is like, nope, that's bullshit. They're diming out their own boss,
Yeah.
and you know, 50 million Elvis fans can't be wrong or whatever it is. It's and then there's like the double standard of you have this you know, people have stopped talking about Joe Biden's fitness for office, even though the guy is still in office. It still happens to an extent, but not as much because he's not a candidate any longer.
Right.
But where is the conversation about Donald Trump's mental fitness for office? There are countless videos, and I've even seen it on Fox News where the one guy will say a thing, and then that dude never shows up on camera ever again. They're like, get this fucker back into the
Yeah.
newsroom.
We can't have him talking. No way.
What are they calling it? Sane washing or something?
Sane
It's
washing.
just this increasingly incoherent babble when he's not outright threatening to shoot a fucking political opponent like
I
Liz
mean, he
Cheney or
said
whatever.
that he said that he wouldn't mind if he gets shot as long as it was through the news media. And go ahead
Right.
and shoot. So wait a minute. Let me before we get to these questions. Here's here's exactly what I think. Let's talk about the merging of technology and the media. Okay. Um, to me, this is what I'm hearing you say, and this is kind of the end result of my original point. Before the airwaves were free, up until up until Ted Turner decided that he was going to make a 24-hour news station, have his own cable, and make money from it, the news wasn't supposed to make money. All right. The news was something that was required by the government. If you had a TV station that you had to, the reason why the government gives you free airwaves to run your TV station in is because in return you have to provide this constitutionally required thing that we
Mhm.
have that we have an agreement on in this country, right? That was the
Right.
case. The minute that news became entertainment, you can make money from it. Maybe it was. It's not just the fact that they got rid of the fairness doctrine and then Fox News came. It was also the technology that made it even possible through cable or through paid prescriptions to subscriptions to just be able to make money and turn it into entertainment. And it has gone from news, it has gone from the only constitutionally protected um, job, right? The only constitutionally protected, what am I saying here? Business to a regular entertainment business. It might as well be a beauty pageant or a car salesman or or a car lot, right? And so news has no more meaning. And to get to the guy's question, yeah, yeah, you're not crazy because guess what sells? When you see something that's crazy or wild or somebody says something really outlandish in 1980 it might have been outlandish to say, oh man, you know, crack babies, oh man, uh welfare queens, but after,
We had you remember Dan Quayle? His entire campaign was tanked because he couldn't spell the word potato or I don't even fucking remember. And
yeah.
like somebody like his boss, like George Bush said something like, "Well, I don't like broccoli or whatever," and people sent him broccoli. So Dan Quayle tried to crack wise and was like, "Well, I don't like cake" or something like that, and the media was just like, "You
Oh, we
motherfucker."
love Yeah.
And then remember the Howard Dean scream? He got up on stage. It was like the 2004, 2008. I don't know. He got up there and was like, "Yeah," but it came out like really weird because he had like a cough at the same time,
Yes.
and then his
Yes.
voice caught. Yeah, and that
But
basically torpedoed his fucking career. I
so
want to go
here's the
back to those
deal.
days.
Well, listen, here's where it comes down to. You see, um, that idea of the one-sided media and everybody making money from it, it has to get more extreme in order to keep the eyes on it to make more money. We were still at a place when Dan Quayle was there where as it was still heading this way, but it hadn't reached this way yet. There were still newscasters out there. Not everybody had cable, not everything was paid. You still had people out there who thought that their job in the media was to try to somehow bring levity, I mean not levity, bring gravity to politics. Their job was still to be like, yo, this guy is dumb as a rock, or this person did this. It's still out to call out whoever it is, and both sides were still doing it. But creeping in the background, Scott, the guy who asked the question, Scott, creeping in the background is this outrage machine that people could turn to all the time. And every time, if Dan Quayle was a Republican, then potato would change its spelling. You, you could tell them that that's not that big a deal. But if Clinton spelled it that way, he would be Satan. All of a sudden, you can make people over time with media 24 hours made just to make money, so it has to always be sensational. Is that you can't just report about this or Mexico or what happened to a boat or a plane. It has to be more sensational and more sensational. You get what do you call it? When you get desensitized to it, and they ended up on the right because they already started by dipping their foot into that we're just going to go ahead and appeal to the racists because we can't seem to win on our policies, right? We can't just tell everybody that we want to give rich people taxes and somehow it's going to continue to trickle down like piss on your back, and also tell you that it's raining at the same time. So they got into the religion, they got into the Southern strategy, and they got into the race. And once you're already in that sewer, you become more and more radicalized. You have to be more sensational to make more money, to keep the same eyes, to keep the same anger, to keep the same button pushing. That's how we got here, Scott, as far as that's concerned. Because after a while, it didn't matter who spelled potato wrong. After a while, it doesn't matter who screamed wrong. You can get a Trump up there, and the people who are already ravenous to hear whatever Trump has to say would continue in double speak or double think. If you know what that is, Scott, the idea that you can just you can hold conflicting ideas in your mind and both of them can be true as long as it serves the state, as long as the person who gives you that comfort says that that's okay, then it's okay. Murder is wrong. Well, unless you're Trump and you do it in the Fifth Avenue, then you laugh, right? Man, everybody has to be smart. We want politicians who are smart. Well, that's until you get George Bush and an entire right wing uh, machine that says, I'd rather have a beer with him. All of a sudden, that's more important than being smart, than speaking properly, than spelling potato properly. They have built they've built a zombie. They've built a Frankenstein because of greed, because it worked, because it made money, because they made an agreement with the devil from the beginning of it in order to keep money and keep taxes low with the Southern strategy. And it all melted into this pot where they kept having to go further and further and further right in order to keep the money and the agreement going. Which means that in order to make people believe it, you'd have to start getting them to believe really weird things. You'd have to get them to start to agree to really weird things. The number one test in the beginning of our fascist movement that we're living in was when what's his face, Pumpkin Boy, went out and said this was the biggest crowd in the inauguration ever for any inauguration. It wasn't bluster. That was the first test. That's the first test of Big Brother. Who is with me? Who is going to see these pictures that says Obama obviously had more people at his inauguration, but you can look at it, see it for what it is, and then say, no, it's still Trump. I can look, no, Trump's is bigger. Sure, there's less people there, but it's bigger. I can believe that. And those who made that agreement with reality are now able to change their reality minute by minute. Man, I hate this thing. Trump says he loves this thing. Man, I love this thing. Did I ever say I hated that thing? I don't remember that. Right? It all comes because the media has successfully, because of greed and because of that original sin, the Southern strategy, the media, the right wing media has successfully turned a population, half the population, into robots who are just who can believe two or five or six opposite things at one time, as long as it means that they get to feel powerful, comfy, happy, and they all get to hate the same people. That's my idea on how media and technology had come together. I think it mirrors what you were saying, but I'm not sure. I don't know where we went with that. I'm sorry. Doesn't make sense though. Let's see. Um, okay, so quick question. Laura has a question that says, I do have a question about Fox being the only source of news and how military folks feel when they get out and hear or see mainstream media. Is it a shock or question mark? So the first question is, about Fox being the only source of media for right wingers, which now it's not, but the idea is the same. That's what I was just talking about. The technology happened to meet that sinister plan at the right time for it to become zombie makers. As far as how do military folks feel when they get out and see mainstream media, I was reserves most of my service, and I it's not a shock. I don't think I ever saw anything different. I knew that most of it was, a show, and nobody ever talked about the reality of uh, of what I saw. But I wasn't shocked by it. What about you, my friend? Were you ever have that feeling like the mainstream media, like what the heck is come when you came back?
So, first and foremost, it's not just there are a lot of other outlets besides Fox News.
Yeah, Newsmax.
There's there's Newsmax, there's OANN, there's National Review.
Oh yeah,
So it's I think out of all of them, Fox News is the closest to mainstream more than any other outlet. So that's the one that
right.
gets picked on. And to their credit, and I fucking hate being in a position to have to defend them, but when you're right, you're right. They have on occasion basically ignored their bias and been like, this is the stupidest fucking thing ever. And 9 times out of 10, that person gets fired or sent back to the fucking mailroom. Um, but there are rare moments where their credibility comes up a tiny bit.
I'm not giving
So
them that. No, 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 no. Wait a minute. No, no, no.
when
Because what you're saying is, even though Fox itself fired them, Fox itself made the minute
Right.
that person
The
said
the
that,
the
they
m-
lost
yeah,
money.
the management the management was like, fuck this shit. Well,
Right.
maybe they didn't get fired, but they definitely got taken off of prime time. And that's a management decision based on, because Fox News tends to have a love-hate relationship with their candidates. And a lot of it comes back to that whole profit thing. When you hit them where their profit hurts, like when all these people who had advertisements on Fox News basically pulled their advertisements. Fox News kind of cleaned up a little bit, and then all of a sudden they got their money back, and they're like, "All right, it's back to business as usual." So when it came out that all these pundits were basically mocking, I think he was still the president at the time, based on the shit that he was saying, and they're like, "These people are fucking idiots." These are their text messages. When they got released, all of a sudden
Right.
they had to go into damage control mode because suddenly they were on the outs with the guy who was going to run for the Republican candidacy for president, and they had to fix that shit. And that comes back to what makes us the most money. As far as Fox News being on military bases, that's something that comes down to money. They're gonna, and remember that they're owned by a guy who has a lot of fucking money.
Yeah.
So when they say that they're gonna pay military installations to let that be a news outlet, nobody is gonna be able to counter that unless they have a fuck ton of money. And you have to remember that a lot of the people who own these other corporations, they're not they're fabulously fucking rich. And
Uh-huh.
where do those people tend to vote the most? In their own, it doesn't matter what their network does, it's which party is going to make me the most money. So the traditional view is that if you are fabulously wealthy, you want to gravitate towards the conservative party because that's the party that's like,
We want
you
to
should
keep you
keep all your
rich.
money. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. So now, to be fair, when I was in, part of my career was in military intelligence, and one of our best assets was CNN, because in that era, in the war on terror, right after 9/11, CNN could get to a place within fucking 10 minutes of a thing happening. They might even be on site as it's happening because they had branches all over the fucking country, all over the world. So we would keep CNN on constantly.
Yeah.
And that we'd be watching CNN, and it cuts to a commercial break, and then here comes fucking Anderson Cooper, the ageless guy with fucking perpetual white blonde hair.
Yeah.
And he's like, an explosion just happened in Bumfuckistan. And we're like, what the fuck? Hey, Private, pull up the map of Bumfuckistan. Get me
Yeah.
the special forces unit that's stationed to Bumfuckistan. And he'll pull up the fucking map on his little laptop that's made out of 7 inches of plastic. He's got a little phone. He's like, yeah, special forces team in Bumfuckistan. What's going on over there? And they're like, can't talk now. We're in the middle of a firefight. And we're like, oh shit. And here's fucking Anderson Cooper with his little helmet on. He's like, I'm in Bumfuckistan, and here's some shit that's going on. Oh my god, it's crazy. It doesn't have to be Anderson Cooper. It could be some fucking random Joe Snuffy.
Yeah.
So we counted them as an unofficial intelligence asset because they literally would be everywhere. Anytime that you
Yep.
want to know a thing, you just fucking turn on CNN and they would be there. And somewhere along the way in the past, like 8, 9 years, they fucking really fell off the radar. And it's like, not so much anymore. But a lot of bases used to have CNN on one channel on one TV, and then they would have Fox News and whatever the next local affiliate was for that specific installation, because you wanted to have like local weather and shit like that, so that you could adequately report and say, hey, we've got a snowstorm moving in, or there's a fucking train wreck on, you know, Martin Luther King Boulevard or some shit. So people are going to be late to work or whatever. So that was kind of how it went. And I got out in 2004. So I'm 20 years removed from whatever the fuck they're doing now. So I don't really have a good opinion. I can only speak to what I have seen in my specific time. And then people that I know that are now retiring and that could say what it is that they're seeing. But ultimately it comes down to money. The military will take your money. If
Yep.
you are a contractor and you tell the military that you can do it as the lowest bidder, which I know is it's a niche meme, but everybody in the military understands the lowest bidder, and maybe some DoD civilians understand it as well. This is a news media outlet that's like, we will give you a lot of money, but not as much. We won't charge you as much as some other outlet. And nobody's going to compete with that because they don't really fucking care. Because typically the military in general tends to skew conservative, even though people who are more left leaning tend to have more left leaning military friends. Um, but nobody's going to try to combat that. That's a culture war that they don't care about, because ultimately everybody believes that if it came down to it, the military would do the right thing if there was some sort of Civil War II or whatever, which
And
nobody thinks that's a real possibility except people that want to masturbate to that fucking image.
and until January 6th happens, and they realize, well, you know what? Maybe you don't need a whole military. Maybe you could do like what Hitler did with the SS and the brown shirts. You can take ex-military people who are riddled with all types of issues that the VA at the time is not dealing with, or couldn't deal with, especially after Trump. And they find a place in these extremist groups. So then, go ahead.
So there are so many mentalities within the military at various leadership levels.
Right.
But everybody, the one thing about the military is it is inherently hierarchical. You're not going to have a fucking sergeant with his squad of 9 guys arbitrarily making decisions, and then
No, no, no,
everybody
no,
else
no.
is like, fuck yeah, let's do it. If the
So
general says we're not going, we're not
we're
fucking
not
going.
going.
And even though that general might be a conservative voter, and a lot of them are, because these are fucking dudes who came up in the 70s and 80s, well, they were, um, ultimately, they are generals. Even if they're the most fucking combat hardened general, they are still a political animal. And even if they are appointed to some dude's cabinet, they're still a general. So they walk a fine line. So you know
Yeah.
how like now you have all these people who were appointed to the Trump administration in various positions, whether it was Homeland Security or James Mattis, for example. James Mattis was revered by his Marines, people that weren't never even served under him, and then by extension, every other fucking military person on the planet loved James Mattis because he was a walking meme machine. But also, he said shit that everybody in the military was like, "Fuck yeah, I get that." The most dark-humored person on the planet would laugh at his jokes, and the most lighthearted person would be like, "That makes sense. I could see people in the military saying that, and I know why that's funny." That's when like fucking Captain America's like, "I understand that reference."
Yeah.
But the second that that dude was like, Trump's a fucking moron, half of his supporters evaporated because suddenly he was going against the grain, and he was no longer, he wasn't one of them. But
Yeah.
you still have to respect the fact that, number one, the dude's a fucking warfighter, and number two, he knows what the fuck he's talking about. So even if you think that he's a loony because his opinion doesn't match your political bias, whether you're on the left or the right, and to be clear, there were people who were liberals who hated James Mattis because he allegedly said shit about killing people as a joke. And then there were people on the right who hated James Mattis because he wasn't sucking Trump's dick. You still respected the fact that this is a fucking warfighter and he knows what he is doing. And if
Yeah.
James Mattis decides he's going to pick up a knife and stab you in the throat, even though he's a journalist, doesn't have to do that, you still respect the fact that he can do that. So he
Right.
knows what he's talking about. So when you have people, that's why I don't buy into the hysteria about like, oh, if Trump loses or wins, either way, I've heard it from either side on whether, the guy loses or wins, that the military is going to rise up and they're either going to save us or they're going to be the death of us all. No, they're not. It's not going to fucking happen. If it does, it's going to be some isolated event with some dingus dipshit who is probably a fucking motor pool mechanic. No offense against motor pool mechanics, but it's not going to be the fucking hard chargers, because hard chargers,
Follow orders.
they, yes, but they also know the business of killing, and nobody wants to fucking do it. There were like 3 dudes in basic training that came in, and everybody instinctively understood that this person was fucking, there was something wrong with them, because they got it. They had like that crazy stare, and they're like, yeah, I can't wait to get in there and shoot the machine guns. I want to learn to kill people. And you're like, I don't want to be near this fucking dude. This dude's going to
Yeah.
get somebody killed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
for all of its faults, the military does have an effect, and it's not foolproof, but there are a lot of people who got chaptered out, and everybody who went through basic training or boot camp or whatever the fucking Air Force calls it, day camp. I'm just kidding, Air Force. I love you. Everybody knows somebody who went in and had that crazy fucking mentality, and they didn't make it. They didn't make it
So
one fucking week.
You got to be a warrior, not a psychopath. Right. As a DI,
exactly.
I've had to send a few to psych eval. I've had to see a few not come back.
Right.
Because you can tell after week 1 or 2 that it's not bluster. This person doesn't realize the reality of the situation and the people around him.
Yeah.
He's in a dream world, and that's more dangerous than us. He's more dangerous than a sniper, right? So I know that. I've seen that. Here's where I want to go. I'll tell you what. I want to talk about education again, because we talked about the media. I think we've answered some of what that question was. I want to go to the idea of education and why do you think that book burning is always the pretext to fascism? And this is just this is an open-ended question to YouTube, to you guys out there. I want you to think about it.
I would go with book banning and not book burning, because there hasn't been a lot of widespread burning of books, because it just seems pointless. You're expending a lot of extra energy to that's more of a symbolic thing. That's like flag burning.
Right.
Whereas you could just ban a book and be like, well, this book talks about sucking dick or something. And everybody's like, it's Romeo and Juliet, motherfucker. It's a tried and true classic. And so, yeah, but it talks about underage sex or whatever, so we can't have that.
Agreed.
So it's easier to just find a moral pretext for banning a thing.
So book banning. We'll say book banning. And here's the reason why, and I want you to expound on it. The same reason why you're getting rid of history in Florida, and you don't want you call teaching about the history of slavery or the civil rights movement CRT, which that's not what CRT is.
CRT bad.
Right. The same reason why that to the point of how did we get here during the Red Scare, the first thing that they did was get rid of any ideas and any ideas and any professors, any books that dealt with almost anything you could think of that you could even almost connect to communism. Books on sharing, books on the history of America that weren't about being great. This happened before. And it's McCarthyism, right? During this Red Scare, the first thing that they do is try to get rid of history and knowledge. The reason why that's so important to this moment and how we got here is because the right has successfully, and I'm going to get to on the left next, the right has successfully demonized intelligence, demonized college, universities, demonized um, science and history for the purposes of making a pliable cog in the wheel. Once you tell somebody the only book that has ever mattered is the Bible, they never you can hear someone like Trump call somebody a fascist and a communist at the same time. You can have them, you can say that it no words mean anything. History doesn't mean anything. If it makes you feel bad, it's not true. And so that is always the first sign when you start to see people demonize college, even though all the rich people are sending their kids to private schools and sending their kids to college. They make college unaffordable to ensure that the only way you can do it is with a loan, right, or a scholarship. Um, this idea of getting rid of education, getting rid of books, banning the books is always the precursor to the to getting rid of that educated electorate that a democracy needs.
Mhm.
Now,
Right.
do I think that when they are doing this, they're doing it for the furtherance of fascism? I don't think so. I think that ends up always becoming, if you let it last long enough, always becoming the outcome, whether you like it or not. Am I right or wrong?
So, I I consider South Carolina to be my home state, for lack of a better term, because that was the state where I graduated high school, and that's the quote unquote home of record that's on my DD 214 for that was where I joined the military.
Okay.
So I'm gonna pick on South Carolina here for a second. I'm looking at this right now, so I'm not making shit up. The South Carolina Department of Education very recently had some sort of hearing for quote unquote instructional materials that were under review to be removed from school curriculum and not allowed in libraries. Some of
Wow.
the things on here I've never heard of, and I they look like books that might be like young adult fantasy material. Like uh, Harry Potter is not one of them, but I'm referencing Harry Potter when I say young adult like fantasy
Right.
material,
Okay.
like magic, swords, and sorcery shit.
Right.
There's stuff, and I shouldn't say shit because that's like one of my favorite genres. Not the young adult side, but just the fantasy side. However, on this list are Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird.
Jesus.
Yes,
Yep.
he was not in that movie, but yes. George Orwell's 1984 is on this list,
And so that's my next question.
and William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet is on this list.
Wow.
There are other authors on here that I don't know, and I don't know if that makes me sound like a philistine or just out of touch or what. Somebody might look at this list and be like, well, "You don't know these," and no, I know, I really don't. But everybody knows Romeo and Juliet. Everybody knows 1984, and everybody knows To Kill a Mockingbird. Now, I read all of those books in high school,
Yeah.
and
I
I mean,
read
1984
1984
in and of
later, but
itself is like that. nobody sees the irony of trying to ban 1984? Like,
Irony
you're
is
not
dead
fucking
when you ban
exactly
1984.
right.
When,
Like,
I mean,
what did Romeo and Juliet? I wouldn't agree with it, but I could see the argument for To Kill a Mockingbird from a certain point of view, just because of the the language in the book itself. But if you're gonna ban a book because of that, then you also got to get rid of what is it, like
the
Tom
Bible
Sawyer and
about
Huck
that.
Finn. Eh,
Yeah,
So
I mean,
where I'm going with that is, so To Kill a Mockingbird, for those people that are watching that have never read the book or seen the movie, is essentially about racial injustice in the South.
mhm.
There is the prominent one of the prominent main characters is Atticus Finch, who's a white lawyer, and his daughter, uh, and I believe it's sort of semi-autobiographical. I can't remember if Harper Lee wrote it based on her childhood or not, because I'm making shit up off the top of my head. I'm looking at like Wikipedia or whatever. Anyway, so it is racially charged, and because it was written about the South in the 20s or 30s, whatever, it also involves a white woman and a black man having sexual relations, which was ridiculously forbidden at the time. Now we're like 100 years past that nowadays, but it
Really?
still deals with and the whole critical race theory bogeyman or whatever. It fits into that niche. So there are themes, and there's even language in the book about, you know, there are racial slurs in the book or
Yeah, the
whatever.
N
So
words in
I
there.
could see somebody trying to use that as an argument to ban the book. But what the fuck did Romeo and Juliet ever do to anybody besides the whole, uh, underage sex thing or whatever? Like, it's
No, it's about
calm the
forbidden love.
fuck down.
It's about forbidden love. It's about forbidden love. Now this is why I said the Bible. I understand what you mean by To Kill a Mockingbird. There's there's a children's Bible, and then there's the King James Bible, and there's the NIV after that. The idea that the story, the story itself is more important than the language is the same thing as To Kill a Mockingbird. That or Romeo and Juliet. That language is not something that they think you can handle until you're 17 or 18. But that story is one that's told from the time I went to Chicago. I went to Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary school. In that school, that the story that's there was told to me many, many, many times in many different books in many different ways that was age appropriate until I got to high school. When I came to Georgia, when I came to the South, and I was speaking about things like Egypt being in Africa, or um, racial injustice, anything. And this is a long time ago, bro. Like I'm as old as you are. When I came to Georgia in high school, and I realized that people did not know that racism was even a thing in some places. Like like just the things that I took for granted, the stories that I was told, the many To Kill a Mockingbirds that I read or was given in my, what I thought was a normal elementary school and normal junior high. I realized that the lack of that knowledge keeps people exactly where they wanted them. I was shell shocked. I was in for a complete culture shock when I moved down here at 15 and realized that the things that I knew about history, the things that I knew about the world, that was not a lot. I mean, I was just 15, was completely null and void here. I mean, it was they did not know any of it, and I would say things, and you know, my black friends would be like, "Oh man, how long have you lived in the library?" And like, "Oh yeah, this the preacher Doug and stuff." And it's like, bro, like this
You
is
know a
this
lot
is
of white
part of a
people
normal
stuff.
conversation. Yeah, like this is, but they can tell you every single thing about every single white person um that has ever folded a napkin the right way. They know it all.
Mm.
And it was like, wow, it was different, it was weird, but to the point that the idea is, I bet you the same reason why you get rid of 1984 and Rome is the same reason why you get rid of Romeo and Juliet. It's
So
the story of being forbidden, falling in love, not listening to your parents. The idea that you could romanticize about doing something that was not told for you to do is the problem. It's not about being gay, it's not about being black, it's not about being anything else other than obedient. That's the story.
well, the so with specific references to the South Carolina Department of Education, they do provide sources, supplemental materials like references on the website that indicate why a thing has been slated for discussion. And
Let me
in
hear
these
that.
instances, I'm looking at the one for To Kill a Mockingbird, 1984, and Romeo and Juliet, because those are the ones that are like accepted as cultural icons. It's because it references material of a quote unquote sexual nature, specifically the relationship between the black field laborer and the poor white woman in To Kill a
Right.
Mockingbird. Romeo and Juliet, there's some hanky panky.
Right.
1984, there's some uh,
Some
unsanctioned
great
relations
unsanctioned sex
between
scenes. If you guys haven't
between
read
like
it, you got to read it, man.
yeah. So
It,
in 1984, in the book 1984, when you are married, you only have sex to procreate to make soldier babies for Big
right.
Brother. But and you can't have sex for pleasure. And
Right.
it's a theme that's referenced in 1984. It's not explicit, but it's there. So and that's why they're referencing it. But here's my thing. We live in the age of the internet, and kids of the age of like 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever, they get cell phones. Cell phones have the fucking internet on them. And a lot of parents are savvy enough to go in and like block their kids and stuff, but you can get on the fucking internet and find illicit material if you want to. You can bypass the parental lockouts. You, literally, so you either give your kid a cell phone and be like, don't look up naughty stuff, or you don't give them a phone. You can't like give them a phone and then hover over them 24/7 a day.
You can
And
go to the
look,
library and look up a book
I
on
am
anatomy on the computer.
right.
Like, yeah, come on.
I'm 100% for protecting my kids from materials that they don't need to be looking at because reasons, that no fucking parent in their right mind is going to be like, hey, Johnny, here's a hustler. Go ahead and look up. Have fun, 10-year-old Johnny.
Right, right.
That's just fucking stupid. But you, you know what? If you want to regulate, if you want to make the safety and sanctity of a child's mind and their sexual well-being, or their rather the lack of their innocence or whatever, you know what, make fucking laws against child marriage, because child marriage and the age of consent in states, there are fucking states that there's like a whole
Mississippi,
website called
Alabama.
ageofconsent.com or whatever that specifically cites what age you can have sex with somebody who's under the age of 18. You start there. Don't fucking start with Romeo and Juliet 1984 and To Kill a Mockingbird. Make fucking laws that make sense. If you want to protect children and save our children, then do the fucking right thing and go to the goddamn source, not fucking George Orwell and William Shakespeare and Harper Lee. Jesus Christ.
You're 100%
Pick and
right.
choose your fucking battles, fucking idiots. I swear to God, people who put these people in, this is why you go to the polls to vote. to keep Moms of Liberty off your fucking school board. Because, heaven forbid they read fucking Romeo and Juliet. God. But
No, the
you're
point
13. If there's grass on the field, you can play ball. You're old enough to get married, old enough to bleed, old enough to breed. Jesus,
it,
this is the mentality that people have.
yep.
But heaven
So
forbid they read To Kill a Mockingbird.
here's the truth of the matter, Sarge. Here's the truth of the matter. That reason that they put there is 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 as ridiculous as a Trump supporter's reason for voting for him. The truth is, I like the control that I have as Moms of Liberty. I like the control that I have as a party, as the hierarchy. I want to have sex with my 16-year-old, but I don't want you to read about it. Right? I don't want you to read about it. That's my control. My control over you is to make sure that you know I would banning any of these books. I don't want. I got a son who's about to turn 7. Yeah, he's not going to be reading To Kill a Mockingbird. But the minute you ban it, what you've done is you have gotten rid of a piece of education. You've gotten rid of a turn, a right or left turn that he was once allowed to make that he can no longer make. That
But
that's that's key.
you also, at the same time, when you say this book is no longer allowed for you to read, you have just given that child the incentive to go find that fucking
To
book at
go
a public
find it.
library or order it off Amazon.com or borrow it from their buddy little Susie, who doesn't give a shit, to go and read that book. Like, congratulations, dummy. You have just given your child the incentive to go look at, why can't I? Because I said so, because it's not appropriate. That motherfucker is going to turn
No,
around and
that's
be like,
it.
I'm going to Johnny's house to play video games. And he's going to be reading Romeo and Juliet. You dumb motherfucker.
Hey, wait a minute. It looks like I have looks like we have chat on Riverside. I did not know. I'm going on Facebook. I mean, I'm going on YouTube for all this chat. Wait a minute.
I don't know what you see, but I only see like a couple of comments on my end. So
Okay, yeah, I see. Okay. It looks like the same people. Yeah, we're new to this. I had one more thing. I wanted to bring it home with one more thing, and now I can't remember what it was. Wait a minute. Oh Lord. Man, I can't remember. So here's the deal. Here's the deal. When we're asking that, when the question is being, oh yeah, here we go. We've touched on the idea is how we got here, people. A recap. The media is the gatekeeper of reality in politics, right? The more that it became sensationalized, the more that it became monetized, was the more that we were all susceptible from the right or the left to using that sacred profession as a car dealership and turning it into whatever was sensational and losing the value of it. The value of the media in a democracy is to inform the people so that we have a well-informed electorate. Unfortunately, technology, unlike Star Trek, where they got the technology they needed after they had become evolved, we monkeys here on this earth got technology that I think we cumulatively were not ready for and abused it immediately and did so with the media. And I'm going somewhere with this, Sarge. The other half is education. Well, we got, why are you banning books? Well, because the best way to keep people under control is to make sure that you don't have a, say it with me, well-informed electorate. Well informed electorate doesn't just mean you know about your politicians or who's your senator or who's your school board leader. It also means that you have an understanding of history, you have an understanding of consequences, you have an understanding of literature, ideas, so that you can have new ones, right? So you can progress. Thirdly, we have a problem in America of not having the information that other countries have gotten the wrong way. That is, we've never had a fascist. We've never had a Mussolini. We've never seen we've never seen our shores invaded by uh German boats. We had one incident, and that incident happened, and we dropped an atomic bomb on the motherfuckers like they were roaches. Okay? I want you guys to understand in America that everyone else in the world that's actually had to deal with, who's actually lived through this fascist thing, thinks it's crazy when we say stuff like, "Come on, is that really fascist though?" Or, "Wait a minute, is it can it be that bad?" If you go to France, they're rioting over pebbles, whatever it is, because they realize that it takes this to turn into that. This little pebble turns into the big rock, turns into the book ban, turns into the book burn, turns into the fascism, right? And in America, we have never been able to see those incremental steps. I think what has happened, the be all and end all, is all of those things that we talk about have been incremental steps that we look over because we don't believe it can happen to us. And the minute you get rid of history and you make it okay to not even think about or understand these things so you can learn from the history in a book so you don't have to actually go through it, America has no actual sense of what that means. Black folks do in America, I can tell you that much. American Indians do. And that's why black folks and American Indians are voting the way that they vote over 90%. The only people who don't seem to understand or who are mixed feelings or are still undecided about this stuff is crazy black folks and everyone else who has no idea what authoritarianism looks like, what not having freedom looks like, what, you know, having to curtail your education looks like. They can easily do it to others, but they've never had that feeling. I thought, in my assessment, that's the number one reason why we in America have allowed the increments to go and look the other way. And just in my comment section, at any point, there's somebody who says, "Oh, not the Hitler thing again." They're going to say the Hitler thing again because it's unfathomable to them to think that.
Poe's law is what it's called, I think.
What's that? What do you say?
I, it's a phenomenon called, I think it's called Poe's law.
Okay.
Uh, it might be, it might not be Poe's law, but it's like a meme on the internet, but it's like a rule of the internet. Like if you have to bring up Adolf Hitler or the Nazis, you automatically lose the argument.
Right. There we go.
Even
Yeah,
if
I've
you're
heard that.
talking literally about, fucking World War II or whatever. But yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. And I agree to an extent. The underlying factor in all of this is we the people, bluntly speaking. um, because we are the governed, and every person has a vote, and that vote is essentially their voice. And yes, there's a lot of things like gerrymandering and, you know court rulings on who can run and what bullshit like that. But ultimately, so for example, and this is not a phenomenon that's unique to the right wing or the left wing. I've seen it on both sides of the spectrum. But I want to draw a parallel to the recent Trump rally at Madison Square Gardens.
Right.
Specifically, there was a white comedian that nobody has ever fucking heard of. This dude was like some kind of D-list comedian. The Wish.com version of Andrew Dice Clay that they literally scraped off of the fucking wire at the bottom of the bargain bin at
That's where
fucking
they found
Walmart.
Hulk Hogan. There's
That's no,
nobody
okay,
left
now
for them.
see, now
I'm
look,
sorry.
I grew up in the '80s.
So,
I
so did
revered
I.
Hulk Hogan as a wrestler, and I'm
Yeah.
sad about it.
But
Anyway,
what
all
I'm
right, no,
saying
I get
is
what you're saying.
he's the
But Hulk
D-list now.
Hogan at least was somebody at some point. This
Yeah.
dude, like, who the fuck is this guy? He didn't even have like a Netflix special. This dude is a fucking nobody. He
I
he
think
didn't
he
even have
did. I
clips on
think he's
YouTube.
got a Netflix special. Bruh, I
Really?
think he's got a Netflix special.
Hold up. How does he
He's got
have a
a
Netflix
podcast.
special and I don't?
That's a good question.
I'm funny.
People on YouTube, we've got to fix this. How does
Uh,
the garbage, the guy talking about black people carving watermelons and the floating pile of garbage
yeah,
have a
this
Netflix
dude got up.
special and Big Sarge doesn't? We've got to fix that, guys.
I've never thought I'm funny. Anyway, so this guy got up in front of an entire audience at their fucking their rally, whatever you want to call it, and he
The
just
orange boon.
yeah, he started ripping off racist joke after racist joke, and some of them were quasi-racist. Some of them were like, you can't really say that's racist, and then some of them were just fucking straight up like, okay, so he didn't just insult Puerto Rico. He also said things like Hispanic people make a lot of babies, they don't
Yeah.
pull out, et cetera, and arguably that's some pretty dumb shit to say. But here's the thing though. So what gets me is the amount of people, and I've pointed this out in some of the rant videos that I've done. One of the things that I respect about that party, for whatever it's worth, even though it's potentially a bad thing, is their monolithic ability to galvanize and unite no matter how distasteful it is. And the point that I'm making here is there are a lot of Hispanic Republican politicians, specifically because so one of the foundations of today's Republican Party is your faith. You
Yeah.
can't really be a conservative politician if you don't have some sort of religious backing or background, whatever the case may be. And so Hispanic people and Black people in general tend to come from church-ish backgrounds.
Yeah.
Like it's just an like white people, you'd be like, maybe that dude went to church, maybe he didn't. But with Black people, you can pretty much guarantee that they spend a good amount of time in a pew somewhere.
Right.
Hispanic people, same thing. Maybe they're not super religious, but definitely have that foundation. So it's no surprise then that there are a lot of Hispanic Republican politicians. And when this dude got off stage, there were a ton of apologists who took to Twitter and other social media outlets, and they 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 towed the party line and said, well, this is disappointing. This is not the GOP. And
It is the
they got
GOP, fucker.
fucking
What's
raked
wrong
over the
with you?
coals
Yeah.
because they knew it and everybody else knew it and everybody else knew that they knew it. And it did not go like they don't care because and this happens within the Democratic Party as well, just to a lesser extent, because for all of its faults and its inability to galvanize its base, when some shit goes down with some dude in the Republican, like Anthony Weiner, for example, or
Who
Al
was
Franken, or some
amazing.
other dude,
Who I'm so mad that I mean,
when
once we saw the text messages, yeah, he had to go. But god damn it, man.
right,
I wish we had a little bit of Republican in us to keep those actual fighters.
see, but I don't want to surrender my integrity for that. But the
No.
point
Like
that
I
I'm
said,
making is
once you
like,
saw the text messages, we gotta let it go.
right, yeah,
But
it's like, well, you got to go, bro. Sorry.
yeah, you gotta go.
just the amount of people that were like red pilled Hispanic politicians that were like, this does not reflect the values of the GOP. I'm like, who the how are you what? Like, now it
No,
totally
wait a
is.
minute,
It
sir. Wait a
totally
minute.
is.
I think you meant to say these are the values of the GOP. I must have misheard you because that's
Yeah,
it. And so one
that's a
thing that
weird
you're
way to.
saying though, one thing you're saying though, I'm gonna end it here, guys. Liz Cheney went on to Colbert, went on to the Late Show with Colbert, and he said, "Why do you think that someone like Trump, why the first fascist came from the Republican Party?" And she danced around it like a fucking marionette with strings. Do you know
Because
why?
ultimately she's Republican, even though she hates the guy. And that's the thing that I want to
The
point out.
reason
Like,
why is
I'm
because
never gonna let anybody forget.
the Republican Party is based on authoritarian values. That's why.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're right leaning and you don't like that, that's unfortunate. That's something that maybe you can change in the future. The reason why you get a Trump is because you refuse to get rid of the guy who 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 was boinking 16-year-olds, Roy Moore, and you still voted for him. The reason why you get a Trump is because you refused to get rid of the all of the Fox News hosts until it was too late, and they got done touching up every skirt that was there. The reason why you get a Trump is because you refused to talk about the the daggone priest, because authority means more to Republicans than morals. The moral is the authority. That's why. That's why. Get what is that? Get mad and get fucked and die mad about it.
He said,
Okay.
that is one of my catchphrases. Yeah,
That's a straight up steal from Big Sar.
that's
I
not a
was
steal if you can have it freely.
Oh man, so that's where I want to end. That's what's happening. You want to know why it got this way? All of those incremental things, everything we've said is also true, but it comes down to the fact that the reason why the first fascist, because you don't have to be an authoritarian, can also be left leaning. That was Mussolini, I believe, right? That's really what he invented fascism. Wait, who was it Lenin? We've got a lot of communist authoritarians, okay? But the reason why in America it came from the right was because the Republican Party made its bed. When the Democratic Party finally woke up and left the racism behind, the Republican Party swooped in and made its bed with the disgusting, with the gross, with being okay with defiling anything you could for power. And it has not changed. It's only gotten better at doing it and duping its poor followers into voting against their own self interest because it makes them feel like they have some sort of power that they don't have. Because at least they're better than the black guy, or at least they're better than the gay person, or at least I have control over my woman. That's what it comes down to. Power is the moral in the Republican Party, and that's my rant. I'm glad we got to it. Sorry about that, Big Sarge. Go ahead.
No, I thought I do want to say to trying to 1701 Alba Gabra Kinsman. I typed it out, but there you go.
Uh, every time I hear, I watch this dude who does tours of um of Scotland, um,
The
and
guy, yeah,
every
I
time
know exactly who you're gonna say.
he talks that shit at the end, and I'm like, I wish I knew what the hell he was talking about. wish I knew that language. Anyway,
It
guys.
it roughly translates to my hovercraft is full of eels.
Okay, I'll take it. I like it. So Benny
That's some
Loco,
Monty Python shit there.
Benny Loco, Alley Cattails, uh, Burrell, Michaels, Stalin. Thank you, Durrell. Stalin. Jeez, I don't know why I said Lenin. Stalin. Uh, but I think Lenin too. But yes, you're 100% right. Stalin. Um, Miss Gumbio too. Thank you for showing up. I don't know. I'm probably missing. That's why I need Laura. Laura, I needed you, man. I'm suck at this. I hope I haven't missed anybody's questions. I'm looking right now just to see if we have any questions before we go. Um, uh, I think we pretty much covered anything that I do see as we kind of covered anyway. Um, all right, that's it. Listen, man, Big Sarge, I thank you so much for coming and enlightening us. And I'm sure that
No,
listen,
thank you for
guys.
having me.
Oh yeah, I appreciate it, man. You're definitely welcome, guys. We've only scratched the surface of it. I'm sure as soon as I get off of this, I'm gonna think about a million other things that we missed, but we only have a little bit of time. And you know what? You know what, Sarge? One of the biggest reasons why I love doing this type of stuff with you is because you are a true um academic. I don't know if you went to college or not, but an academic. You are someone who you can tell spends time studying, thinking, reasoning, uh, and questioning his own philosophy. And I find that to be refreshing. I find that to be worthwhile, and I absolutely love every time we have a show, a live, or anything, man. I appreciate it. I really do.
Well, thank you so much.
With that, hey, give him the catchphrase. If you don't like it, Big Sarge says,
Two claps on a rig. Oh, the other one. If I did
kill
that
it.
bad. I had some dude at work. It was a direct report, and I'm trying to help him out with a thing, and I'm like,
Oh, all right, all
and
right.
he, I was like, so teamwork makes the
Dream work. I love it.
dream, and he looks at it and he types back. He's like, happen? What the fuck? No.
No, it rhymes, son. It rhymes.
Yeah, I just was like, fail.
uh, all right, man. You know, it's my son's bedtime, man. I'm out of here. Guys, thank you so much for showing up. I just put up a new one, and it's a really funny one. Go watch it, but more importantly, vote tomorrow. Do whatever you have to do to vote. I've put up all the time. I put up sites that you can register with that will have you use your car to go pick up people who need rides to go vote. If you've already voted, you can still help. There's still things to do. All right, guys. Um, we have to vote like our life depends on it. Let's vote like we are Germans and we actually do know what the consequences are. Let's vote like we're in France and we're scared of seeing that, or Italy, and we're scared of seeing that shit. Let's do that. And everything we possibly can do to vote down ballot, um, make sure we win the House so that when they get registered, so that when they get sworn in on the 3rd of January, we won't have a problem on the 6th. Feel me? I love you guys. Peace out. And tomorrow we're going live. You already know that. And I know you guys are going live too on the Sons of Liberty. So,
Hmm. Yeah, well, ours is not going to be serious. It's, I mean, there will probably be one or two admins who pop in to report a thing, but primarily, like, nobody's undecided at this point.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
tomorrow is like everybody is either gonna vote or not if they haven't done so already. Our thing is just let's just fucking hang out and relax and shoot the shit and like try to not think for a little while. You get if you don't drink, get on there and like drink water. If you do
yeah.
drink, fucking have a shot. Just be together, hang out, and fucking have fun. Just be a community. That's all we're trying to do.
Guys, we'll be doing the same thing, man, and we'll be going back and forth because I plan on just doing, giving updates as they come or as needed, but we need to like mentally and emotionally be okay with ourselves for a day because without the community you'll end up pulling your hair out looking at every single number and letting your mind go wild. Reality is bad enough without us having to turn it worse in our minds, so we're going to be doing the same thing, and I have a feeling I'm going to be popping in on you guys too, man. I'm popping in on you guys over there at Sons of Liberty. We love you guys. With that being said, peace.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. And that stream